This is video history from the J. Bay Jacobs Library of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Our guest, Woodard Beacham, first president of the college. Everybody calls you Woody. How will it be if I call you Woody today?
Please do.
Could you start out, Woody, and tell us something about your background? Where did you come from? How did you end up in your permanent home of New Orleans?
Well, I was born in Macomb City, Mississippi. My birth certificate says April 10th, 1911. I was the fourth son of Woodard Davis Beacham, M.D., and Ada Felder Beacham. I have three brothers who studied medicine, and my eldest brother, who did not study medicine, had two sons, one of whom did. I entered the University of Mississippi, where I received my literary degrees and my medical certificate in 1933. Inasmuch as the University of Mississippi had only a 2-year medical school at that time, I enrolled at Tulane University, where I graduated in 1935. I served my internship and residency at the Charity Hospital of Louisiana in New Orleans. So I have resided in New Orleans since the summer of 1933.
You were the first president of the college. Even before we talk about the start of the college and what led to its founding, how did you happen to be selected as president?
Well, I'll have to admit that I was on a committee that was appointed by the American Committee of Maternal Welfare that resulted in the formation of the National Federation of Obstetric Gynecologic Societies. And I was on the first executive committee of that organization, and I served as secretary of the National Federation. And I think it was a result of the work that I did as secretary that I received the honor of being the first president.
How about the rest of the officers? How did the college find a secretary and the staff to get underway?
Well, the man who was with the American Committee on Maternal Welfare was a gentleman by the name of Carl Richardson. And when the National Federation came into existence, Carl Richardson was named executive secretary, but he received his remuneration from the American Committee on Maternal Welfare. When Carl accepted the position with the Chicago Dental Society, he was succeeded by the late Donald F. Richardson.
How about the elected secretary of the organization, Woody?
The elected secretary of the Academy. Now we're getting from the National Federation, which was reconstituted into the American Academy of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Do you have reference to the first secretary of that organization?
That's right.
The Academy? Well, that was none other than the late Ralph Reese of Chicago, Illinois. When the chairman of the nominating committee approached me at the meeting at which the reconstitution of the National Federation occurred, he showed me the list of names of the persons who were being considered by the nominating committee for the position of the secretaryship. And I told him that certainly was the most important office in the new organization. And so he pointed out that Ralph Reese's name was among those, and I told him that surely he would be our first choice. And fortunately, Dr. Reese accepted the position, and he held the office of secretary until he became editor of the journal known as Obstetrics and Gynecology.
Woody, it certainly seems obvious today that we need an individual membership organization in our specialty. Why were we so far behind, let's say, the surgeons and the pediatricians in establishing an individual membership organization in the specialty?
Well, that could well be because we had so many obstetric and or gynecologic organizations in the USA. For example, there was the American Gynecological Society, founded in 1876, that at its beginning had a very limited membership of some 60 members. And then there was the American Association of Obstetricians, Gynecologists, and Abdominal Surgeons, founded in 1888. It had a constitutional limitation of 100 members at the time it was founded. And then we had the various regional societies. Among those, the Central Association of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which had a constitutional limitation of 500 members. There was the New England Society, the Pacific Coast, etc. And then some of the national organizations had a section on obstetrics and gynecology, for example, the American Medical Association, whereas the Southern Medical Association, another very large organization, had a section on obstetrics, another section on gynecology. And then there were a number of state societies and municipal or local societies. And it was felt by many obstetricians, gynecologists, that we already had too many organizations, but we did not have a single representative organization that could truly speak for the members of our discipline.
Woody, let me carry you back to the year 1951 now. The college has been, or the academy's been formed. You've been selected as president. What happened then? How rapidly did the academy grow? When did it meet? What sorts of things happened in that first year?
Well, of course, things were very, very busy, and the response was as expected. We knew that there was such a great need for a national organization for ethical, competent obstetricians and gynecologists that it would be successful. So there was no doubt about that. And I have here, just so I'll be sure to give the right figures, the secretary, Dr. Reese, published a notice in the Journal of the American Medical Association to the effect that the American Academy of Obstetrics and Gynecology was being formed. And as a result of that, his office received a great number of applications. As a matter of fact, a business meeting was held during the American Congress of Obstetrics and Gynecology in Cincinnati, during the period of March 31st to April the 4th, 1952. And when the executive board of the academy convened in March of that year in Cincinnati, Dr. Reese reported that he had received over 3,000 applications for fellowship, each with a check for $50 enclosed for initiation fee and dues. And at that time, 2,180 members had been elected to fellowship. Almost 400 had been denied fellowship for various reasons, and several hundred applications were under consideration.
What were the qualifications for fellowship in the academy at the beginning? What did it require?
That was one of the reasons why there was difficulty in bringing the organization into existence. There was some question in the mind of some people as to whether everybody who was simply interested in the practice of obstetrics and or gynecology was eligible for fellowship. There are others who thought it should be limited to board-certified individuals, diplomates, so-called. But there again, when the motion was made to reconstitute the American Academy of Obstetrics and Gynecology I beg your pardon. When the motion was made to reconstitute the National Federation of Obstetric Gynecologic Societies into the American Academy of Obstetrics and Gynecology, it specified that those individuals for eligibility would have to meet the approval of the membership committee. And in this communication sent out by the secretary, there was a copy of the requirements for membership in the New York organization, and it indicated that they had to be capable, competent individuals.
The development over the first year was certainly rapid. Do you have any feeling now for how many of the eligible obstetrician gynecologists joined the academy at this time? Was that 3,000? Pretty good percentage of those involved or not?
Oh, it was. It was. As a matter of fact, the people who had gained reputations in their local communities as being real obstetrician and or gynecologists, those individuals were quick to apply for fellowship in the academy.
It's certainly true, I guess, even today, that no organization starts out without controversy and dispute, and probably those who think it's unnecessary. What were some of the roadblocks in the early year?
Well, as would be expected, there were some personality conflicts. There were individuals in certain organizations who had been there for a number of years, and they thought that this new organization might in some manner affect their authority and their power. And I think that's one of the things that entered into consideration. Now, I must give Dr. Philip F. Williams, late Philip F. Williams of Philadelphia, full credit for being a great peacemaker and convincing a lot of these individuals that this new organization would be good for the members of our discipline.
What were some of the predecessor organizations? You've mentioned the American Society for Maternal Welfare, the Federated Societies. Could you say just a word about what the major organizational structure had been nationally prior to the founding of the Academy in 1951?
Well, the American Committee of Maternal Welfare played a very important role in what was actually accomplished in these United States insofar as improving the care of health in women. And I happen to have here with me minutes of a meeting of representatives of obstetric and gynecologic societies. This meeting was held November 16th, 1944, in St. Louis, Missouri. It was under the chairmanship of Dr. Fred L. Adair. The Mother's Charter was presented there, and I have the names of the people who were involved representing the different agencies. As a matter of fact, each of the duly constituted OBGYN societies was entitled to have a representative at the meeting of the American Committee if they so desired. And I see here, item 5 is a discussion of organization of a federation of obstetric societies. And the two members of that committee, George W. Kosmak, who at that time was editor of the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and Dr. Fred L. Adair, president of the American Committee on Maternal Welfare. There were meetings subsequently held for the purpose of discussing the advisability of bringing this new organization, a national federation, into existence.
Woody, this is the 31st annual meeting on the day that you and I are talking now about this. Tell me something about the first annual meeting.
The first annual meeting was held in Cincinnati And actually, it was a business meeting. It was held in conjunction with the American Congress on Obstetrics and Gynecology. Now, the American Congresses, so-called, proved to be very valuable. And the American Committee continued to hold these conferences, and they resulted in the formation of the International Congress on Gynecology and Obstetrics, which we refer to in this day and time as VIGO. Our first meeting in Cincinnati, as I said, was in conjunction with the World Congress, and it was there that we conducted our first business meeting. At that time, there were about 500 fellows in attendance at the meeting of this new Academy of Obstetrics and Gynecology, which was duly incorporated under the laws of the state of Illinois in 1951.
And your name appears among those who signed the Constitution.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us any anecdotes, Woody, about the first year? Any things that stick in your mind that as the fledgling organization got underway?
Well, some of the fellows became very upset at the very outset when this invitation published in the JMA for fellowship was issued. They thought that the way it was worded, that anybody who had any interest in obstetrics and or gynecology would be eligible for fellowship. But in defense of the secretary, I made the statement, which is in print, that the secretary was good enough to put into print the qualifications of fellowship in this new academy. For example, A minimum of 5 years training or practice limited to obstetrics and or gynecology. And there I have parenthetically the verb, quote, limited, unquote, has a crystal clear meaning. B, evidence of high ethical and professional standing and clinical experience as determined by the fellows in his district. In other words, we wanted him to meet with the approval of his peers. What we were aiming for was actually the national organization for ethical, competent obstetricians and gynecologists.
I think you started wisely, because those sound very much to me like the same qualifications that the bylaws call for today in terms of qualifications for fellowship.
We had a very good committee on Constitution and bylaws. As a matter of fact, the late William F. Mingert, who had served as the secretary of a number of very fine organizations, including the section on obstetrics and gynecology of the AMA, the American Association of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and as I believe in that day and time it was still Abdominal Surgeons, and also the Central Association of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Some of the members of the Central Association felt that that organization, by virtue of the fact that it had 500 members, should be declared a national organization, and it would then be representative of the obstetricians and gynecologists. But certainly it had no more right to be a national organization than did the West Coast Society or some of the other regional societies. And that's the reason it was insisted that the National Federation was truly represented. The National Federation consisted of a representative from each of the duly constituted obstetric and or gynecologic societies in the USA and Canada who desired membership. So it was a representative organization, but it represented organizations, not individuals. And that's the reason it was decided that we should have the American Academy of Obstetrics and Gynecology.
Woody, today, as everybody knows, it's the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. What was the change?
While we were contemplating bringing this new organization into existence, we had a number of letters who expressed the opinion that we should call it a college from the very beginning. Those who are familiar with the definition of academy pointed out that there wasn't anything wrong with that name, that the French Academy, for example, is the acme of all that's good in certain realms of endeavor in France, and that the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, etc., were all first-class organizations that did a good job of representing their disciplines. And two, we did not wish to engage in any controversy with members or fellows of the American College of Surgeons. We realized what good that organization had accomplished for the care of the patient and certainly the improvement of hospital standards in the USA. So it was decided that we would begin under the name of Academy, realizing that in the future the name probably would be changed. So in May of 1956, the name was changed to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists.
Well, perhaps the other big change, and certainly one that all today's fellows are familiar with, is the requirement of full certification by the American board before one is eligible for fellowship. How did that come about?
Well, we realized that at the outset there were a number of very capable individuals who had been practicing for many years, who certainly were eligible by virtue of the fact that they were capable, ethical obstetricians and gynecologists. But time had passed, things had changed, and now it was apparent that in order to be a fellow of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, one should be a diplomate of the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology.
Do you remember when that change took place?
Well, I made a note so I wouldn't be guilty of misquoting. It was on May 11th, 1956.
Woody, let me ask you one last question, which I guess is kind of philosophic. You began with the first annual meeting. This is the 31st annual meeting. What's changed?
Well, everything has changed for the better. For one thing, the numbers. We had relatively few exhibits at our first annual meeting, and we noticed the number of exhibits we have here. The quality of the industrial exhibits has improved, and obviously we have a more inclusive program. Everything has improved, and that we are very thankful for. And we're grateful to you. I might as well compliment you, Warren. You've done a good job. We are glad that you are our executive director.
Well, I thank you, but you're the one we're interviewing today, Woody. Let me ask you a couple other questions about changes in the meeting, if I may.
Yes.
Were motion pictures a feature of the annual meetings in the early years?
Yes, we've had motion pictures for a long, long time. We've had them, but we didn't have as many to select from as your committee has today. And of course, the quality wasn't as good. And of course, in the old days, we had to be content with black and white. So there again, that part has been improved too.
What can you contrast perhaps any of the topics of the meeting with this one? Was there as much emphasis, let's say, on cancer, or was there more emphasis on the mother, the baby? Can you see a switch in topics or focus over the years?
Well, there has been some, but I think that's resultant from the fact that there have been improvements in our management of patients, the care of patients has improved. And there are many things that we know about today that were not known when we conducted our first meeting. And that's one of the gratifying things about this organization, is that it has been and is and will be very educational.
Woody, just before we conclude, obviously you're our first president. The classic individual is the one who's a legend in his own time, but surely you have to be within the American College. I don't know how proud and pleased we are to have you participating in this video history with us today, because I think you bring a perspective that certainly no one else could. Do you have a word of advice for us as we conclude?
Well, I'm just so very, very thankful to be here. As you said, the goals were set at the very outset, and I don't think we can put too much emphasis on honesty, integrity, and morality. And certainly, if people have those virtues, those qualifications, they will be ethical, and we must insist upon competency. Thank you.
Thank you very much.